Welcome, first-year dental students. Today, we're zeroing in on the critical biomechanics and the actual hardware you'll be using throughout your careers to replicate mandibular movement. Look, an articulator isn't just some glorified door hinge, right? It's a precision mechanical device. It simulates the exact, intricate movements of the jaw so we can fabricate restorations that work in perfect harmony with the patient's natural anatomy.
Here's our game plan. We'll start with the biological and mechanical baselines, then compare the different instruments available, break down their specific structural designs, and finally, look at the clinical procedure of actually bringing the patient's data onto the instrument.
All right, part 1. Fundamentals of articulator mechanics. Before we even touch a mechanical device, we absolutely must establish exactly what physiological movements we're attempting to simulate in the lab.
The foundation of this whole process rests on what we call border movements. Think of these as the absolute outer limits of how the mandible can move: up, down, side to side, and forward. Because these physical boundaries are strictly locked in by the body's ligaments, they are incredibly repeatable. We rely heavily on border movements because that exact repeatability is what allows us to accurately program the mechanical fossae on an articulator. Take a look at the natural skull. Notice the specific physical distance between the temporomandibular joint, the TMJ, and the dentition itself. That exact distance serves as our biological baseline. If our mechanical instrument doesn't respect that specific spatial relationship, literally everything we build on it is going to be fundamentally flawed. Now, when the jaw opens and closes, it rotates around a very specific imaginary line called the transverse horizontal axis, or the THA. Replicating this exact hinge axis is vital. See, as the mandible arcs around the THA, the cusp tip of a lower tooth travels along a very specific radius. If your articulator alters that radius even a little bit, you're going to introduce distinct problematic morphological errors right onto the occlusal surfaces you're designing. And when we ignore that radius, the mechanical errors just jump right out at you. A small articulator drastically steepens the arc of closure, which causes the non-working cusp path to deviate wildly from what would actually happen in the mouth. On the flip side, a full-size articulator has a radius that closely matches the patient's natural anatomy, practically eliminating those errors. Moving into part 2, comparing articulator types. Let's look at how this biological foundation translates into the actual hardware you'll be selecting for your restorative treatments. Starting at the lowest end of the accuracy scale, we've got the non-adjustable articulator. Essentially, it's a small hinge. It's only capable of basic opening and closing, and its axis of rotation is located way closer to the teeth than in a real human skull, resulting in a severely shortened, unnatural radius of movement. So, what's the clinical danger here? Well, it's pretty high. Say you use a thick interocclusal record, meaning your bite registration wax props the teeth apart. When you pull that wax out and close the instrument, the teeth are going to occlude in a totally different position than they would in the patient's actual mouth. This creates a massive risk of positive errors, specifically non-working occlusal interferences, and those can be devastating to a restoration. Stepping up a tier, we find the semi-adjustable articulator. Because of its larger, more anatomically correct size, it gives us a much closer approximation of the tooth closure arc. It also lets you set the condylar inclination and accounts for the angle of Bennett, which is that natural lateral shift of the mandible during side-to-side jaw movements. For most dental practices, this is your absolute workhorse. This table gives you an objective comparison of your hardware options. The non-adjustable, it's fixed, limited, meant for simple single units. The semi-adjustable gives you straight-line paths and limited settings for intercondylar distance, which is the anatomical distance between the rotational centers of the left and right condyles. And then you have the fully adjustable models. These offer maximum precision, replicating the entire character of those curved border movements, but they require immense skill, time, and expense. That's why they're reserved for extensive full-mouth reconstructions.
Part 3. Arcon versus non-arcon designs. Within that highly popular semi-adjustable category we just talked about, we really need to differentiate between two fundamentally different anatomical setups. It all comes down to where the ball and socket are physically located. The arcon design directly mirrors human anatomy. The condylar elements are on the bottom and the fossae are on top. The non-arcon design literally inverts this, placing the track on the bottom and the condyle on the upper member of the articulator. The mechanical consequence of that inverted non-arcon design is actually quite significant. When you open an arcon articulator with a wax record, the angle of the condylar inclination stays perfectly constant with the upper jaw. But opening a non-arcon instrument actually flattens the condylar inclination relative to the upper member. That alteration can introduce an immediate error of several degrees into your restorative work.
Because the condylar inclination remains geometrically constant, even when propped open by thick interocclusal records, arcon designs are highly preferred for precise restorative dentistry. This is especially true when you're meticulously waxing up occlusal anatomy.
All right, final section, Facebow transfer step by step. We understand the hardware now, but an articulator is basically a paperweight without accurate data. So how exactly do we mount the patient's maxillary cast into this instrument?
Enter the Facebow. This is a clinical, caliber-like instrument that acts as the essential bridge. It records the 3D spatial orientation of the maxilla relative to the skull's hinge axis. We take this Facebow, physically attach it to the articulator, and use it to mount the maxillary stone cast in that exact, precise orientation. This makes sure the plaster model sits exactly where the real teeth sit relative to the patient's actual joints.
Now, there are two main ways to find that axis. For maximum precision, like when you're using fully adjustable units for full mouth rehabs, we use a kinematic Facebow. This method uses a grid and a stylus to hunt down the true exact kinematic hinge axis of the patient. It's a bit of a trial and error process. You attach the device to the lower teeth, put the grid near the ear, and have the patient open and close in a small 10mm arc. At first, the pin is going to trace an arc on the grid, but by adjusting the sidearms incrementally, you eventually find the exact spot where the pin stops arcing and just spins purely on a single point. That pure center of rotation, you mark that on the skin, and boom, you found the true hinge axis. However, for routine fixed prosthodontics, like a single crown or a simple bridge, you're most commonly going to use an arbitrary ear Facebow. Instead of tracing a pure kinematic movement, this device relies on anatomical averages, utilizing the external auditory meatus, the ear holes, as an approximate reference point.
I know it sounds a bit less precise, but the math actually justifies the ear Facebow perfectly. 75% of the time, the earpiece places you within 6mm of the true hinge axis. And here is the real clinical justification. If 5mm error in axis location only yields a completely negligible 0.2mm displacement at the tooth level, provided you keep any vertical dimension changes on the articulator to a minimum. For daily practice, this is highly clinically acceptable and much faster.
Finally, going beyond just finding the axis, if you advance to complex full-mouth rehabilitation, you'll need to record the full border movements. Tools like an air-activated pantograph use clutches on the teeth and a series of recording tables to trace every single lateral and protrusive border movement. You then use these complex tracings to custom program a fully adjustable articulator so it perfectly matches the patient.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for your first year. As a restorative dentist, how will the precision of your chosen articulator dictate the clinical success and longevity of your patient's restorations? The restorations you create are not just static sculptures, they are functional gears in a dynamic biological system. Leave this explainer considering this: respecting the exact mechanics of the temporomandibular joint and knowing exactly which instrument to use to simulate it is the absolute foundation of predictable, successful clinical practice. Thanks for learning with me today.